All right. So we are also going to look at these types of equations dealing with decimals. And we have 3.6y equals 9, and we're trying to get y by itself. And we have to think about, well, how is this 3.6 right now? Is y by itself? The answer is no, there's a 3.6. Well, how is the 3.6 related to y? Well, when it's 3.6y, that means 3.6 times y. And so we have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which would be division. Remember, division undoes multiplication. And just to review on our inverse operations, remember, we just did a bunch of problems with inverse operations, addition and subtraction. They are inverse operations of each other. And also multiplication multiplication's inverse operation would be division, and division's inverse operation would be multiplication. So here we go. We are trying to get y by itself. This is 3.6 times y, so we have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which is division. So we're just going to go ahead and divide both sides by 3.6. And when we do that little line, remember that means division, and we have to do it to both sides of the equation. So now what we have is 9 divided by 3.6. So I'm just going to go over to the side and I'm going to do that. And that's what I want you to do when you're doing these problems. On these little calculations, just go off to the side of your paper and do that. So 9 divided by 3.6 right there. Now remember, you can never have a decimal in the divisor. You can't divide by a decimal. So we're going to need to go ahead and change it. So we're going to move it over one decimal place. The decimal place is here. Whatever we move here, we have to move here in the dividend as well. So we're going to move this over one place, and there's nothing there, so we're just going to put a 0. So really what we're doing is 36, or yeah, that becomes 36, and this becomes 90. So we're going 90 divided by 36. Okay, so let's go ahead and work that out. And I really like doing these types of calculations on the side because it keeps our equation neat. We want to be able to do all the algebraic notation here, and we don't want to put all this in the middle. It just clutters everything up. So anytime you do a little calculation, just go to the side of your equation. So that means that everything can stay lined up in your equation. So 36, how many times does that go into 90? I'm going to say that it probably goes in 2 times. 2 times 6 would be 12. So I write the 2, carry the 1. And then 2 times 3, I'm sorry. 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So then we're going to do the subtraction. And the 0 is not big enough, so I need to borrow from the 9. That becomes a 10. This becomes an 8. 10 take away 2 is 8. 8 take away 7 is 1. All right, so we have a remainder. The remainder is less than 36, so we know that we're on the right page. I'm going to need to, since there's a remainder, I need to add a 0 to 90 and drop it down. Now, when I add this decimal, the decimal place has to go right above decimals. Remember, you have to keep the decimals lined up when you're in doing division. So we're going to go ahead and see how many times does 36 go into 180. I'm not sure. Let's see here. Maybe it goes in, well, 36 is close to 40. So how many times does 4 go into 18? I think it goes in like 4 times. So I'm going to try to see what 36 times 4 is, and I'm just going to do that up here. So 36 times 4. 4 times 6 is 24. Write the 4, carry the 2. 4 times 3 is 12 plus 2 would be 14. And so that's obviously not big enough. I need to go bigger. So how about I try 36 times 5? 36 times 5. This is 144. I need 180. And so let's go. I need to make it bigger. So 5 times 6 is 30. Write the 0, carry the 3. 5 times 3 is 15. Plus 3 is 18. Hey, all right, so that's perfect. So 36 goes in there 5 times. 5 times 36, we already figured that out up there. It's 180. We subtract, there's no remainder. That means that 9 divided by 3.6 is actually equal to 2.5. Now this 3.6 divided by 3.6, any number divided by itself is always going to equal 1. So this is going to end up being 1, and 1 times y is just y. So there we have it. There's our answer right there. Y equals 2.5. Okay, cool. So let's go on to this problem right here. We're trying to figure out what A is. So we need to get A by itself on this side of the equation. And at this moment, is A by itself? It is not. This says A over 4.2, but this really means A divided by 4.2. So we need to do the inverse operation of division. And what's the inverse operation of division? Yes, it is multiplication. So we're just going to multiply both sides of the equation by whatever this is. So we're going to multiply this by 4.2 and this by 4.2. This side of the equation by 4.2. It's 4.2 over 1 is the same thing. And these 4.2s, they end up canceling each other out. And so we're left with A equaling, and then we need to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here to my side and do 18. I don't want to do this calculation in the middle of my equation. So I'm going to go over here to 18 times 4.2. And whenever you're multiplying by decimals, you don't need to worry about the decimal places right now. Just do the write the problems down, write the numbers down, and then do the multiplication as if the decimal wasn't even there. So 8 times 2 is 16. Write the 6, carry the 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. Now we're going over to the tens place, so we need to make a 0 in the ones place, so we start in the tens place. 4 times 8 is 32. Write the 2, carry the 3. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 would be 7. And then I just add. 6 plus 0 is 6. 3 plus 2 is 5, and then that's 7. All right, now we just need to count up the decimal places. So no decimals there, but there is one decimal place here. That means we need to have one decimal place in our answer. So that's it right there. So 18 times 4.2 ends up being 75.6. All right, now it is your turn to work on these problems right down here. So what I'm going to say is I think you should probably start working on 9, 10, 11, 12. So I want you to go ahead and pause, work on those problems. When you get done, press play, and then we'll come and talk about them. Hey, where's our friend? Where's the pause? Oh, there's the pause dragon. We're always reminding you to pause your iPad or computer or laptop or phone or whatever you're on. Go ahead and work those problems, and we'll see you in a bit. See you in a bit. Okay, we are back, ready to start problem number 9. Now, on problem number 9, we're trying to figure out what G is. To figure out what that variable is, we need it on this side of the equation by itself. And right now, it's not by itself, there's just 5.7. Well, how is 5.7 related to G? 5.7G means 5.7 times G. So we need to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which would be division. So we're going to divide this side of the equation and this side of the equation by 5.7. 5.7 divided by 5.7, that is equal to 1. 1 times G is just G. Okay, so now G is by itself. We can figure out what it is. We just need to do this calculation. So I'm going to go over to the side and I'm going to do this division here. 45.6 divided by 5.7. And remember, whenever you're dividing by a decimal, the number one thing you have to remember is that you can never divide by a decimal. So we need to change this so it's not a decimal anymore. So we're going to move the decimal place over 1. If you do it here, you have to do it here. So we end up with 57 and 456. So 456 divided by 57. So can 57 go into 4? No. Can 57 go into 5? 45. So I'm sorry. No. Can 57 go into 456? Yes, it can. We just need to figure out how many times. So let's see here. That's a bit of a challenge. I'm going to think of 57 like 60 because it's close. How many times does 6 go into 45? 6 goes into 45 about, well, 7, so 42. So I'm gonna try 7. So let's go up here, and I'm just gonna use a different color. I'm going to go 57 times 7 and just see what I get. 7 times 7 is 49. Write the 9, carry the 4. 7 times 5 is 35 plus 4 would be 39. Well, that is not big enough. So we're going to have to, unless I did something wrong, 7 times 7, 49, 4, 35 plus 4 would be 39. Okay, so we're going to have to bump it up. Let's try 57 times 8. 8 times 7 is 56, so I'm going to write the 6, carry the 5. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 5 is 45. Hey, and there we have it right there. 456, same thing. So that means that 57 goes into 456 8 times. When we do the multiplication of 8 times 57, we're going to get this answer, 456, and then we subtract, and there's no remainder. So boom, that's the answer. The answer is 8. Well, that worked out. If you got that right, great job. On to number 10. Ooh, this one's getting interesting. This says negative 6f equals 8.04. So when we're doing this problem, even though this is a negative, you can't think of this as a subtraction. It's just, this means negative 6f. Oh, we're trying to figure out what f is first. So there's f. F is kind of a skinny letter. That means we need to get f by itself on this side of the equation, and right now it's not. There's this negative 6 there. So don't be confused by the negative. It's just a number. It's just negative 6, but it's not subtraction. This is negative 6 times f. So how negative 6 is related to f is through multiplication. So we have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which would be division. So we have to divide both sides by negative 6. Negative 6 divided by negative 6. Well, a negative divided by a negative, that's a positive. 6 divided by 6 ends up being 1, and 1 times f is f. Okay, so we did it. We have f by itself. Now we just need to figure out, well, what is 8.04 divided by negative 6? Well, whenever we have a positive divided by a negative, we know our answer is going to be negative. So whatever our result is, we know it's going to be negative. So now we don't have to think about the negative. Now we just need to figure out what the number is. So 8.04 divided by 6, yeah, I'm going to do that right here. So 8.04 divided by 6. And it just so happens that this is not, this is just a regular whole number. And so we don't really need to change everything. This is not a decimal, so we can just leave it as 6. This is a decimal in the dividend, and that's okay. You can have a decimal in the dividend. You just can't have a decimal in the divisor. So this is 6. Perfect. Let's just go ahead and do the division. Does 6 go into 8? Yes, it does. How many times? It goes in 1 time. 1 times 6 is 6. Then we subtract. 8 take away 6 is 2. Okay, 2 is less than 6, so we know that we did that correctly. We need to go ahead and drop down this 0, and the decimal goes straight above this decimal, and our answer goes straight above. So now we're asking ourselves, hey, how many times does 6 go into 20? And it goes in 3 times, because 3 times 6 is 18. When we do the subtraction, we have to borrow. The 0 is not big enough, so that becomes a 1. 10 take away 8 is 2. And 1 take away 1 is 0, so that's good. 2 is less than 6, so we know that we did it correctly. Now we need to drop down this 4. And we're asking ourselves, hey, how many times does 6 go into 24? And it goes in 4 times. 4 times 6 is 24, and there's no remainder. That means that is the answer. We are done, which is perfect. So we're just going to take that answer, 1.34, and write it there. We already figured out that a positive divided by a negative is a negative, so we know that our answer is negative 1.34, but that's it. So if you got that right, great job. All right, on to number 11. So in number 11, we are trying to figure out what n is. Need to get n by itself on this side of the equation. And right now, is n by itself? You're right, it's not. It's being divided by 0.14. So what is the inverse operation of division? You're right, it's multiplication. So we're going to multiply this side of the equation by 0.14. Whatever we do to this side, we have to do to this side, 0.14. Perfect. And then this is 0.14 over 1. These are going to cancel each other out and become 1, and 1 times n is just n. Now we have n by itself, which is what we're looking for. Now we just need to do this multiplication right here. And so I'm going to go over to the side to do this. 15 times 0.14. And there's a 0, but I don't really need to write it down in this multiplication because it's not really needed. It doesn't really do a whole lot for us. So 15 times 0.14. Now, whenever you're multiplying decimals, you don't really worry about the decimals until the end. So here we go. 4 times 5, that's 20. I write the 0, carry the 2. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. And then I'm moving to the 10 split, so I need to put a 0 there. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1. So then I add. I get 0. 6 plus 5 is 11. Write the 1, carry the 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So I have 210. Now I need to worry about the decimal places. So I go back to my original numbers, and there's no decimal places there. There's 1 decimal place here, and then another one. So that's 2. So that means my answer has to have 2 decimal places. So this is 1, 2, which means my decimal goes right here. And it is 2.1. Even though this says 2.10, I don't need to write that 0. The 0 is not needed. 2.1 is the same thing as 2.10. So I'm just going to leave my answer as 2.1. So if you got that right, great job. All right, on to number 12. So on number 12, we're trying to figure out what m is. And remember, to figure out what m is, we need m on this side of the equation by itself. And right now, it is not. It is m divided by 6.3. So what is the inverse operation of division? It is multiplication. You are correct. So we're gonna multiply this side of the equation by 6.3 and this side of the equation by 6.3. We have to keep things equal. So this is 6.3 over 1. Those 6.3s, they cancel out each other and they become 1. 1 times m is just m. Now we have m by itself. And so at this point, we just need to figure out what is negative 9.1 times 6.3. All right, cool. I'm going to do the negative part first. So we have a negative multiplied by a positive. Whenever you have a negative multiplied by a positive, your answer is going to be negative. So I'm just going to write that piece in first. And now I'm just going to multiply the numbers. So I have 9.1 times 6.3. Right now, the decimal places, they don't matter. So we're just going to multiply the numbers. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 9 is 27. Now I'm to the 10 spot, so I need to write a 0 here. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 9 is 54. Then I add, and I end up with 3 plus 0 is 3. 7 plus 6 is 13. Write the 3, carry the 1. 2 plus 4 is 6, plus 1 is 7, and then we have 5. And now this is where the decimals come into play. So 9.1 has 1 decimal place. 6.3 has 1 decimal place. That is 1 plus 1, which equals 2 decimal places. So, you can't really see that. So that's 1 decimal place plus another decimal place equals 2 decimal places. So that means my answer has to have 2 decimal places. So that's 1 decimal place, and that's the second decimal place, which means my decimal point needs to come right after those 2 places. So that's my answer. It's going to be negative 57.33. So if you got that right, great job. All right. So now I think you should pause and go ahead. Oh, there's our friend the pause dragon. I want you to work out problems number 13, 14, 15, and 16. And when you get done with those, go ahead and press play, and we will see how you did. All right, see you in a little bit. All right, we're back. Let's go ahead with problem number 13, 8y. So we're trying to figure out what y is, equals 93.6. So to figure out what y is, it has to be by itself on this side of the equation. Right now it's not. It's 8y, which means 8 times y. So we have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which is, you are correct, it's division. We have to divide both sides by 8. 8 divided by 8, that is equal to 1. 1 times y is y. So now we have y by itself on this side of the equation. Now we just need to do this little division right here, 93.6 divided by 8. So I'm just going to go over here. Remember to do this calculation on the side. 93.6 divided by 8. And this isn't a decimal, so we don't really need to do anything. This is a decimal, and that's okay. We just leave it as it is, okay? So let's go ahead and see how many times 8 goes in 9. It goes in 1 time. 1 times 8 is 8. We subtract. 9, take away 8 is 1. We drop the 3 down. 8, how many times does it go into 13? I would say it goes in 1 time, because if it was 2 times, it'd be 16, and it's not. 13 is less than 16, so we know it goes in once. We're going to multiply. 1 times 8 is 8. Then we subtract. 13 take away 8 is 5. And then we need to drop down the 6. And as we do that, I'm going to put this decimal point directly above this decimal point right there. And now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 8 go into 56? And it goes in 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. And there's no remainder, so we're done. That's perfect. 11.7 is our answer, and that's what y equals. Both of the numbers here are positive, so we don't need to worry about the positives or negatives, so we're good. Boom, there's our answer. I hope you got that one right. All right, on to 14. So with problem 14, we have negative 3.4c is equal to 20.74. So we have to isolate c. We have to get it by itself on this side of the equation. Right now, remember, don't be tripped up by that negative. This is negative 3.4 times c. So negative 3.4 is related to c through multiplication. So we have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which would be division. So we have to divide by whatever this number is, and this number is negative 3.4. So we're going to divide both sides by a negative 3.4. Negative 3.4 divided by negative 3.4 ends up being 1. 1 times c is c. So we got c by itself. And we drop the equal sign. So now we just need to figure out what this is. 20.74 divided by negative 3.4. So I'm going to do the positive and negatives first before I actually do the long division. So we have a positive divided by a negative. Whenever you have a positive divided by a negative, what is your answer always going to be? Yes, it is going to be negative. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. All right, perfect. So we know our answer is going to be negative, so let's just do the math. We have 20.74, and that's being divided by 3.4. We can never divide by a negative. Not by a negative. I'm sorry. We can never divide by a decimal. So we need to change the decimal place over 1. If we do that here, we need to do it here. So really what we're doing is we're doing 34, and this becomes 207.4. All right, cool. So does 34 go into 2? No. Does 34 go into 20? No. Does 34 go into 7? Does 34 go into 207? Yes, 34 goes into 207. Now let's figure out how many times. I would say 34 goes into 100 about 3 times. So it probably goes into 200 6 times. So I'm just going to go over here and figure out what 34 times 6 is really quick, just to make sure. So we have 34 times 6. 6 times 4 is 24. Write the 4, carry the 2. And then 6 times 3 is 18 plus 2 is 20. So yeah, that's perfect. It goes on 204 times. Not 204 times. 34 times 6 is 204, which means it goes in 6 times. So I'm going to write the 6 over the 7. And then 6 times 34, we already figured that out. It's 204. I'm going to subtract. Sorry. And so I subtract. This is 7, take away 4, which is 3. And then that's 0, and that's 0, so it's just 3. Okay, and our remainder is less than 34, so we know that we did that correctly. I'm going to go ahead and put this decimal up there. And then we're just going to drop down the 4. And then we get 34, which is awesome, because we know 34 goes into 34 1 time. 1 times 34 is 34. Boom, no remainder, we're done. So our answer is, we're just going to bring it over here, negative 6.1. So C equals negative 6.1. If you got that right, amazing. Awesome job. So proud of you. Okay, on to 15. Let's see how you did on 15. Okay, on number 15, we are trying to figure out what S is. That means we need to get S by itself on this side of the equation sign. Is it by itself? No, of course it's not. It's S divided by 10.5. So we need to do the inverse operation of division, which would be multiplication. Sorry, excuse me. We're going to multiply both sides by 10.5. This becomes 10.5 over 1, and these 10.5s, they cancel each other out and they become 1. 1 times S is S. And then we have 3.8 times 10.5, and I need to determine what that is. So I'm going to go over here. Now, when I look at the number of digits, 3.8 has 2 digits, 1, 2, and 10.5, has 1, 2, 3 digits. So whenever you're doing multiplication, like we're not paying attention to the decimals right now, but when you have 3 digits versus 2 digits, you always want to put the number with the most digits on top. Okay, so this has 1, 2, 3 digits. This has 2 digits. The 3 digits, that's going on top. So 10.5 is going on top. So it's not because 10.5 is a bigger number. It's because it has more digits. That's why it's going on top. So, all right, and then we're just going to do the multiplication. And I'm doing this off to the side. 8 times 5 is 40. Write the 0, carry the 4. 8 times 0 is 8 times 0 is 0, plus 4 is 4. And then 8 times 1 is 8. Now I'm in the tens place with this 3, so I need to go ahead and put a 0 in the ones place, and then I can start. 3 times 5 is 15. I write the 5, and then I'm going to make this a 1 for 15, 5, and 1. 3 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. And then 3 times 1 is 3. Now I'm just going to add, and this is getting a little bit closer to my equation than I like, but you know, we're already here, so we're just going to go with it. We're going to add 0 plus 0 is 0, 4 plus 5 is 9, 8 plus 1 is 9, and then 3. And now this is where we go ahead and take a look at the decimal places. So 10.5 has 1 decimal place, 3.8 has 1 decimal place, and 1 plus 1 equals 2. So that means our answer has to have 2 decimal places. So here's 1 decimal, here's the other decimal place, which means our decimal has to come right there. So there's our answer, 39.9, and it's 90, so I don't need to write that 0 on the end. So it's just going to be S equals 39.9. If you got that right, great job. Okay, the last one, problem number 16. We are trying to figure out what H is. So to do that, we got to get H by itself on this side of the equal sign. All right, is H by itself? Of course not. Of course not. It is not by itself. Okay, so this is H divided by 0.4. There's 0.4. How is it related? It's related through division. So what is the inverse operation of division? Yes, it's multiplication. So we have to multiply this side by 0.4. And whatever we do to this side, we have to do to this side. So I'm going to actually use parentheses, 0.4. That means the same thing, negative 7.2 times 0.4. And then this is going to be 0.4 over 1, which is the same thing as 0.4. These 0.4s, they're going to cancel each other out, and they end up being 1, and 1 times H is H. So now we did our job. H is by itself. So the last thing we need to do is just do this multiplication right here. But first, I see that there's a negative. There's a negative and there's a positive. So whenever you're doing multiplication, you have a negative times a positive, your answer is always going to be negative. So I'm just going to get that out of the way first. Now we just need to multiply these numbers. So I'm going to multiply 7.2 times 0.4. Okay, and it's 0.4, but the 0 isn't needed, so I'm just going to leave it as 0.4, just to keep things simple. And then I just do the multiplication. So we have 4 times 2, which is 8, and then 4 times 7, which is 28. Yeah, and And that's pretty much it. So now we just need to figure out where does the decimal go. So 7.2 has 1 decimal place. 0.4 has 1 decimal place. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So that means our answer has to have 2 decimal places. So this is 1 decimal place. This is another decimal place. And so right after there, that's where I put my decimal. So my answer ends up being 2.88. H equals negative 2.88. So there we go. If you got that right, you are amazing and you're awesome and I'm so proud of you. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.